Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we have a look at the 2023 film, There's Something in the Barn. This is episode 422. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
You know, we're doing two foreign films back to back. I think that makes us officially an intellectual podcast.
It makes us cosmopolitan, I like to think. Yes.
We're classy now.
Yes. I love it. And finally, also in Denver, the classiest of us all, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
That is very kind. Thank you. Hello.
You're quite welcome. I am excited to talk about this and excited to bring to a close what I think has been like a really exciting year. Because spoilers, this is our last show of the year, and we will be back with show 423 soon enough. So, There's Something in the Barn is a 2023 Norwegian comedy horror film. It stars Martin Starr, who you'll know from Freaks and Geeks and the Spider-Man movies, Amrita Acharia and Kiran Shah, directed by Magnus Martens and written by Aleksander Kirkwood Brown. The film tells the story of an American family that, after moving to Norway, encounters murderous elves. The film premiered on 23 September at Fantastic Fest. Tony saw it there and came back and said, we must watch it. It was released in Norway on the 10th of November, and it's getting good reviews. So let's get our opening thoughts. We'll go Tony, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go. So Tony, opening thoughts. There's Something in the Barn.
I saw it at Fantastic Fest and just really liked the kind of Gremlins-y Christmas horror. This is one I went, oh, okay, this can be on our roster of holiday movies, right? Like, I was really excited. I'm always excited to share Fantastic Fest movies that I think are good. And I have a friend I met who worked in the editorial department for both The Wave and The Burning Sea, Kali Damaselli Branson, and he's awesome. And so he was like, I saw his name in the credits. It was like, so there's multiple reasons to share this. I also, Rain and I were lucky enough to go to Oslo a few years ago. Have, again, filmmaker friends I met at Fantastic Fest. That's being a common theme of like, hey, let's hang out and watch movies, right? Mm-hmm. So my friends who who made Norwegian Ninja, I got to go visit them and have got to see bands and hang out in Norway, and I'm kind of missed it. I missed public transportation there a lot.
Yeah.
But we definitely we were in Oslo, so we weren't out in the middle of snow like this movie. But always, again, try not to be the ugly Americans if possible, or annoying Americans. So there's a lot of reasons why I like this, but I think it's a good, it's violent, but it's cartoony violence.
Yeah.
It's, if you like Gremlins and, things like perhaps like Rare Exports, since it comes from,
Scandinavia,
but like, snowy places that aren't in the US, right?
Right.
I think this will be in my rotation, in the future as well. So I just couldn't wait to bring it to everybody because I think it's cool.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Julia, we settled in for There's Something in the Barn. What are your thoughts?
I found it super entertaining. It was definitely a really good holiday horror movie. There was some things that bugged me, but it's deliberately, I just kept yelling at that TV going, why are you making such bad choices?
Right. There's a lot of that.
It's like, this is so dumb. Why are you doing this? But it was very entertaining. The only thing I didn't like is, because it's a comedy, it's kind of it's supposed to be lighthearted. the way that they treat like the deaths in the movie kind of bothered me because I was like, oh, I really liked those characters. It just really,
Oh, right,
it
right,
really
right.
distressed me how kind of they're just like, oh well, they're dead.
Yeah, because
But
there's nobody really as mean as the woman in Gremlins who gets it like in the
Right.
chair. Like there's
That was
not
yeah,
Polly
people
Holiday,
you actually
right?
kind of want to get
Yeah.
hanging around, right? So
and
I
so I
get you.
felt bad.
Mrs. Deagle.
Yes.
Yeah, but no, but it was really, really a fun ride.
Excellent. Drew, what about you?
I also thought that this was a lot of good fun. I love Christmas themed horror movies, but I find myself often depressed that with all the really cool Christmas folklore that there isn't like most Christmas horror movies sort of end up following the Silent Night, Deadly Night. Let's put a homicidal maniac in a Santa Claus suit, which
Yeah.
is fine. I'm not saying that all of those movies are bad, but there's so many cool creatures and myths surrounding the winter season and the Yule season. So I'm always happy to find that somebody has tapped that vein because I feel like, Krampus is obviously a movie star now. Like there's
Yeah.
been one big budget Krampus movie. There's tons of really low budget ones. And that's cool, but like there's much more to be explored. So just the sheer fact that somebody was doing a barn elf movie
Yeah.
that just made me giddy, but like it's done so well because I think a proper Christmas horror movie kind of needs to tightrope between a certain level of nastiness because you're sort of you're sort of poking holes into the general level of merriment that comes with the
Yes.
holiday,
Oh, well said. Yeah.
but there needs to be balanced out with a degree of whimsy, and I think this movie does that pretty
Mhm.
well. I mean, it definitely leans more towards the side of comedy than horror, but this movie just really worked for me. It was a really good time.
That's
Yeah, I
really
need
well
to
said.
I
Yeah,
need to
please.
find there was a short about the Icelandic Yule lads that was definitely more horrific. And I think they might have continued into a movie or there could have been another Yule lads movie, but it's not. I need to find that because that's another one where you're like, that's not what we have. So it's
Yeah.
fascinating. I'm like, wait, I looked it up after it was the short was at Fantastic Fest. So I'll have to try to dig it up again, but I'll see if I can find that for you, Drew, because the whole all the Yule lad stuff is
Oh yeah, well, in Grayla
definitely
and the Yule Cat and like
yeah.
Actually,
There's
it's
a good
actually
movie. There's a good short, and I think there's also a movie, but not as whimsical though. Definitely.
well, not to hog the microphone, but one of my bucket list things is to go to Iceland during Christmas, so
That'd be cool. Yeah.
I can soak up some of their Christmas traditions, which are way different than ours. So
Right.
Do you think that horror, that holiday horror, Christmas horror, do you think it is so popular because people feel overwhelmed by the enforced cheeriness of the holiday, or what?
Well,
Because there's a lot of this stuff now, as you pointed out.
I think that's part of it, but I also think it's if you go back to like the pre Coca-Cola Santa,
Mm.
like
right.
there's a lot of traditional, like, and I mean, ancient traditions of ghost stories and spirits and things of that nature, and sharing stories of those creatures and spirits during this time. So yes, I think it's partly a reaction to the saccharine, sort of, as you said, forced, cheeriness of it. But I also think that there's also this sort of, hearkening back to A Christmas Carol, and even further back than that, because, like there is something ominous about the winter. and inherently ominous. And then you tap in, the flickering lights and the sort of bizarre color schemes of Christmas. It adds this sort of weirdness to the whole thing. So, I think whether people like it or not, it's kind of baked right into Christmas.
Yeah, and I think there is some reaction in the kind of countercultureness of it, of like this saccharine sweet, thing. But also remember, like BBC has had ghost stories at Christmas for years and years and years and years. The fact that we don't have that same tradition. Actually, when I found that out as an adult, I was like, "Oh man, why don't we have Christmas ghost
I know,
movies?"
like if you the
What?
Signalman, it was which I saw, which was a Christmas ghost story. The Signalman is so good,
Right. We don't. Why didn't we have that growing up? For me personally, when I found that out, I felt
There are
cheated
references
somehow.
to it. There are vestiges of it. That's interesting to me because as we talked about that film, Beyond Tomorrow, it's a Christmas ghost story, and it's the most
Absolutely.
wonderful time of the year, which is a Christmas classic, but didn't actually come around until the 60s. But if you remember in that one, Johnny Mathis sings, "There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases
Right.
long, long ago." So there's a vestigial memory of Christmas as a time for spookiness. But all the spookiness has been shoved towards October, and
With the exception of the Christmas Carol movie, which
And
are played.
OMG, by the way, I know this is probably an endorsement before its time, but we watched the Christmas Carol with Patrick Stewart. Holy Christ, is that good? I'm just saying right
and
now.
also remember, as far as traditions go, like when you go to Europe and you go and there's like, here's this cottage that's like twice as old as your whole country.
Yes.
It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Something like that where you really puts things in perspective. So a lot of the traditions, we've slowly again kind of Coca-Cola Santed it out, right?
Yeah. Except at the same, to me, it's a seesaw of concepts because it's
Sure.
true. A lot of these concepts are new, super new. People are like, "Oh, I hate Elf on the Shelf. It only showed up in 2013 or whatever." And then at the same time, we are so tiny cosmically that anything can be can become a tradition that's meaningful to us. And that's sort of one of the things I love about the forced merriment is the hypnosis of it all. The notion that you can take the world and bend it into a
Sure.
wonderful illusion. Anyway, these are Americans. This story, Martin Starr, who was the fabulously geeky Martin Starr, I can't remember the name of the character, on Freaks and Geeks, is now grown up and has a beautiful wife and unfortunately a deceased previous wife and two lovely children. And he has forced them to move to Norway because his uncle has died in battle with an unseen creature in the barn. And
Well, and what's funny about the wife is that she's actually the actor is actually Norwegian.
yes,
So I kept expecting her to start speaking like Norwegian and him to be like, "Wait, what? You speak Norwegian?" But no.
it's a thing that they could have done script
Yeah.
wise. It could have
Right.
been, "Oh yeah, well luckily my family's from here. I can be the one to make commentary." They
Sure.
decided clearly that wasn't what they wanted to do. But
Or they could have made it her uncle.
for sure.
Yeah.
They really could have. You're absolutely right. Yeah. It's who knows? I think they just decided, but this is my bet, is that they decided not to rewrite the script once she was cast.
Well, I also think, per, the discussion around Christmas horror, in our opening thoughts, I think they're kind of making it about what we were just talking about, this sort of, Americans sort of stumbling their way into something larger than them, which
Yes.
Yeah,
is,
for sure.
this ancient magical thing. And,
Yes. Yeah.
it's also so for like fish out of water humor, it's better to have an entire group of sort of, they're basically the Griswolds. I mean,
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
They totally are.
Yeah. So
but
talk to me about that.
geez,
What does that look like when they get to the town?
well, I
Griswold
mean, the
town.
very first thing they do is harass a moose, then they harass a cop, and
Right.
like they're not making good impressions, these
Oh my
people. Like,
God. Yeah, they want to take a selfie with a moose, and Yeah, and the thing that now this struck a slightly false note to me because I'm like, I don't do this, and I'm not special. But they walk into a coffee shop and the first thing they do is like strike up conversations with everybody in the store. And I mean,
Right.
Yeah, she
I
walks in and starts going, "Hi, hi."
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's just
I actually really related to that.
Well,
I
I mean,
totally
there
got
is
it.
a stereotype about Americans being like sort of overly in people, like they're friendly, but they're also overly in people's space. And I think
yes.
Yeah.
that's them kind of showcasing that here.
Yes. I mean, it was really funny how they're just getting into conversations with everyone and but nobody's a jerk in this film. I mean, they're the best they are is just sort of standoffish in a Scandinavian way that's reminded me mainly of distant relatives of my own,
Well,
and so
also, it's a smaller town too, so it's not the same as in the city.
yes,
That's the big difference.
there was
But
a
again, like
I
Rain and I were looking at the cafe, and there was this hot chocolate place in Oslo. Not to keep harping on it
yeah,
too
yeah,
much,
yeah.
like where we just missed. Like we were like, oh man, I want to go back to the hot chocolate place because it's really good. But yeah, this is a smaller town, so it could just as easily be somewhere up in the mountains here, right? And you kind of get treated similarly, but being in a foreign country, it's even more of like, whoa, what are you doing, Americans? Like
Yes.
your bubbliness is not like,
It's so
hey,
funny
who are
because
you? And be whoa.
when I
Yeah.
when I think of the ugly American stereotype, and you can all tell if there's anything that makes you think of that I'm not listing, but when I think of the ugly American stereotype, what I think of is being super drunk teenage college students,
Well,
carousing their
I
way down the
see
street and
No,
yelling too
more.
loud.
I
that's
You
see
not
know,
more
accurate.
adults just being pushy,
Yep.
or
mm,
not also, everything. You can really watch it. You can really see who cares to kind of blend in and be cool, or
hmm
not when you're at the
Absolutely.
hotel breakfast
oh
Yep.
yeah,
area.
Exactly.
This is not like, but we
Right.
had
It's loud and
that's the place.
demanding and
Yeah,
privileged and all that is what
right.
the obnoxious
yeah,
stereotype
that's
is.
I
absolutely right.
kind of kept expecting the wife to go more full villain. Like I was pleasantly surprised that she didn't.
Mm,
But like the fact that she's like an influencer and she wants to open this bed and breakfast,
right.
and like all of that seems like a commentary on sort of like the shallowness of American culture
Yeah.
sometimes. But it seems like her, like I was pleasantly surprised to learn that like her love for her stepchildren is sincere,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that like she was a much more layered character than I think I was
Yeah, they
expecting.
leaned away from jerkwad influencer and more towards
Evil stepmother. Yep.
naivete. I mean, well, just
They
she
leaned
wasn't
away from
even the
evil
evil.
stepmother. No, that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying. They leaned away from evil stepmother.
yeah, they leaned away from that, and she's at most she's just naive and part of the what now online gets called toxic positivity movement.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. What was her mantra? She had like a mantra that it's like make happy or
yeah, think
happy
happy,
face,
think
think
shiny,
happy.
make pretty. I don't know actually,
Yeah, it was something like
something like
that.
that.
But and it's
Do you know what the
yeah,
Barbie theme used to be? The Barbie mantra.
no.
If you talk to the Barbie product people, it was prettified reality,
Which is also what
which
Disney is.
it's something very similar to that. Yeah, I can't remember what they're, but I always loved that notion of it's reality but made pretty, which is like that's like Instagram before its time. That's sort of amazing. Anyway, so these guys they come into this world of morose, largely silent Norwegians, and they're big and galumphing and so forth. I can't remember who made the observation that to the Europeans we're just all one big Jethro, just sort of stomping towards them, and I totally feel that. But anyway, what they discover And I thought this was really cool. They meet the people from the town, and it's a small enough town that you can meet everybody important, including the cop, and including the guy who runs the historical outdoor museum where you get information about barn elves. Meet all these people. And we'll go back. We'll circle back to him, but what you find out is when they go to a party after they've had a few drinks, they do like a full 180. They are completely transformed into laughing, hugging, dancing, fun-loving
Yeah, well,
people.
they invite them to the party. They throw a party just to try to like,
Yes.
what can we do? And
Yes.
that's the way is
They make the
everybody
mistake of
gets
not
a little
inviting the
bit
cop. I don't know why.
right.
That
Yeah,
is funny. Yes. Yes, how awful. That's really funny. But yeah, actually throwing the party, I got to admit, was a good idea. Like that was that was out of a number of like poor decisions they make, the party was a good one. Yeah. So Julia, would you like to explain the outdoor open air museum that winds up being a big exposition provider?
So, the guy, let me see if I can find his name because I love that character. He's just delightful. He's so funny. His name is
Actually, I'm not sure.
he's
It's
called Tor.
yes.
Tor is his name.
yeah, Tor Age.
Age, yeah.
Yeah.
The Tor Age is has just I guess it's a museum. Yeah, and he's got all these little barn elf figures and everything, and houses and all this. And so the kid of the family, who's basically the hero of the story, truth be told,
Yeah.
Lucas, wanders over there, and he's like, he asks him if barn elves are real, and the guy's like, oh yeah. And he tells him, he goes, basically, it's the whole gremlins thing, like you're saying, of like, don't feed them after midnight. It's like, they don't like loud noises. They don't like bright lights. They don't like change. Well, this kid knows because the kid has already suspects that there's a barn elf in the barn because
Right.
he's seen things and he's heard things. So, he has not put two and two together that the whole point of them being there is they're going to turn the barn into like an Airbnb. And so he's just like, oh, okay, cool. But then as the movie progresses, he starts going, oh, well, these rules are important and we need to be following them for this barn elf who loves cookies, by the way. So
Yes.
they get, oh, that's also the ET. Like you got the gremlins and you got the ET thing of like hiding the person, the figure in another space and then bringing them sweets. But anyway, so that's what that guy is. But Tor ends up being even though he gives them all the real rules that are really true, he doesn't know that they are real. He thinks that they're not real. He thinks it's just a myth. So it's kind of like if we, knowing all about vampires were to be like, yeah, these are the rules of vampires. And then it turns out that there's a real vampire. And this kid's like, well, no, I'm following all the rules you gave me for this vampire.
Right.
We're like, well, vampires aren't real though.
Well, even that, like, I feel like is a play on, American, because like normally, and if you have, Americans going to a European country in a horror movie, they're all going to be like, the Europeans are all going to be like super superstitious and believe in the supernatural outright. And so like I felt like this character, even though he's the exposition character, is sort of turning that on the head, and instead it's the American kid
Yes.
that believes first and foremost.
Well, it's very much the Santa Claus thing of like, people always telling kids, "Oh yeah, Santa Claus is real." But then in any movie where Santa Claus is real, the grown-ups are always like, "No, dude, Santa Claus is not really real. We're just kidding." But the kid always knows that Santa Claus actually is real.
Santa Claus is real.
Right.
Yes.
And also, like a lot of myths, there's just enough I mean, the reason he has the museum is also because it's just real enough, like where you kind of hedge your bets. Like,
Right.
I'm not saying there's not elves, but if they were, here's the rules. It's that kind of, we all kind of believe in elves, even though we kind of don't really think they're real, but why take a chance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they encounter because, who's going to listen, right?
That is really hilarious. Okay, so they learn these rules. Just as you mentioned, Julia, they're not the same rules, but they're similar to how Zach Galligan gets the rules for the Gremlins, and they proceed to break all of them because they are the family. They invite they invite everybody to the party, and that that alienates the elf. I should say, I want to take a step back. There's a whole charming sequence where Lucas the kid and the barn elf start to trust one another. And this is super fun. And it gives us a chance to get a close look at the creature design of this elf and get an idea of what this creature and the other similar creatures are going to look like. Drew, would you like to explain how elves are presented in this thing?
Well, I think to again, to an American audience, they look very much like a classic garden gnome. Actually, you know, it's a stocky, short guy with a big pointy hat and a big beard. And you know, what they do in this movie is they found a way to oscillate between them being very funny and charming to, if they contort their faces just right, they look really menacing.
Yes. So bizarre. They do look a lot like garden gnomes. You know, this guy, this little elf, he doesn't speak English. He speaks, and he may not speak Norwegian. I have no idea. He speaks whatever he speaks.
I don't think he speaks Norwegian either. I think he speaks gnome. I mean, I think he
Yeah.
speaks elf.
Right, and Elvish, I suppose, and he likes to eat cookies, and he wears little trousers with you know, which means, by the way, they have to knit these clothes, and this is where the real folklorishness comes in, because the kid starts giving the elf cookies. The elf starts doing household chores for the family.
Right.
Well,
another thing the guy said. He said if they can either be really helpful to you if they like you, or they can make your life a living hell.
A lot of that is right on to actual barn elf mythology.
Sure, yeah.
By the way, like
I
they, you know,
love it.
like the thing about synthetic light, I think that's just like tacked on as an homage to Gremlins, because I've, in any of my reading about this particular folklore, somebody's, if I'm wrong, you know, correct me. But you know, right down to the thing about the porridge, like that is like actual barn elf mythology. So, you know, somebody on this movie did their homework.
Yes. Well, and just like with werewolves and vampires, you take what you can find, and then you add whatever might edge it over into something new that helps your plot along. You know, so you might introduce something with werewolves. You know, that I know there are examples that I can't think of right now, but you know, and I know that, like, being destroyed by the sun for vampires is a concept that I believe, like, technically being destroyed by the sun as opposed to just generally being afraid of God. That's like a Nosferatu thing that people loved. And you know, and so you have something like that here. I mean, as you point out, you add to it. That's really cool. Let's see. So, and I just want to mention about the porridge. They give you a recipe for porridge in this movie, and it looks wonderful. Like, I want some of this porridge. Like this that he makes with, like, what is it? It's rice and butter.
Yeah, different grains.
And
then he's
cinnamon and grains.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
you know,
that's the butter cinnamon sugar thing is that's my oatmeal.
Yeah, it sure sounds a lot like oatmeal to me.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, that's my, like, as far as like that goes, cinnamon sugar, butter, you can't go wrong in oatmeal. Yeah, it looked great.
And it was real. The Toraga has the best darn lines in the whole movie, where, like, in that, he just mellowly explains it, and then he goes, and now also we know what porridge is.
Yeah, no, that character and that actor is really great. His approach,
no, he's so funny.
It's awesome.
Well, no, because the kid goes, "I know what porridge is." He goes, "Yeah, you do now, because I told you."
Exactly.
I don't know how to pronounce this, but it looks like his name is Kaye Helevang Larson. So, Mr. Larson, we enjoyed your work a lot. So yes, you know, for this period of the film, he's getting along with the elf really well, and you could be forgiven for wanting to stop here, because that would be neat. But unfortunately, it's a horror movie, so these things take a turn for the worst, because they start doing things to antagonize the elves. They have the party. What really causes the turn, though? Because
the party, and then it's it's stacked. So the party is the one thing, and then they have really super loud, bright ornaments, which
Yes.
he tears up, and then they have to call the cops to say,
Right.
"Oh, maybe it's maybe it was youngsters. It could have been that
The
moose
moose
that you
came back to get
angered."
revenge.
Yes.
Later on, she's like, "Fox coming in the window or whatever."
Yeah,
But the cop lady is hilarious. I loved her, and I'm so sad that spoiler alert, she meets an untimely demise, and that made me really bummed out. I was like, I love that character.
Yeah, I agree.
The other guy that he meets, he's like, "Can I ask you a favor?" And the guy's like, "You want me to play Santa, don't you?" He's like, "Yeah." How did you know? That guy also meets an untimely demise at the hands of the
Raymond
no.
is
So
awesome.
sad.
Yeah. So they after several things piss off the elves, our friendly elf, who I don't really have a name for, but the family's barn elf, basically calls the other barn elves, and they descend. It's in this
The
Drew.
IMDb calls him the main elf.
Okay. Well, Drew nailed it exactly right. That he is basically Gizmo. All the other gremlins come, and start
Well,
laying
yeah, I
feet
mean, he
down.
calls them after repeated, I mean, he gets
I
puked
mean,
on at the party. Like, I mean, they're definitely not
he's
winning
he's
anybody
not
over.
quite Gizmo
No,
because
because he
Right.
did do some
he
killing.
does kill
Killed the uncle.
the guy that comes dressed as Santa Claus. Like
Well, and
Really
he
does
killed
true.
kill
he
him.
killed the initial uncle.
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
true.
So
Reason they
he's
have
killed
those.
at least 2 people, but
Yeah, he has a very. It's funny. It has a very kind of way old-fashioned, like grim fairy tale. Like people just die left and right, and that's just you just get on with things. So this
well,
elf,
I think also the idea is that what the movie is trying to say is that maybe when you're dealing with such a insurmountable paranormal force, like the best thing you can do is maybe make an alliance, put Pandora back in the box, that kind of thing.
So again, it's spoilers, but the real inciting event though is when he doesn't get porridge, which would have solved everything.
Yes.
But
Oh my God.
instead, they serve lutefisk, which has been corroborated by friends as far as like, oh man, nobody really. It's like one of those classic, if you're at a family reunion, somebody brings something in Jello, like, oh
Yeah.
no, that's the
Aspic.
thing, like. Yeah, something in aspic. Just like, oh, but yeah. So
Or fruit,
his
like
porridge gets
fruitcake.
eaten,
Like who
and
eats
they
fruitcake?
trade. Exactly. So while it is traditional, it's definitely an acquired taste, and a lot of people were like, "Oh man!" And I think it was on set. They, you have hot lights and stuff. So I
Oh
think the
goodness.
lutefisk scenes weren't, if I remember correctly, weren't the favorites of a lot of people. But that's the exciting event: is he swapped out his nice porridge for lutefisk
Because the stupid dad eats the
because the
porridge.
dad
The
eats
dad
the
makes
porridge.
so many poor decisions, and it just drives me crazy. I'm like, he just always was doing dumb
Yeah,
things and
yeah.
ignoring what his kid was wanting or saying.
Yeah, that's his
I
lot in
like.
life, right?
I just want to point out that I like fruitcake, but well, an example here to me would be anchovies. If you've ever, some people dig anchovies, but to me they are so salty that they're almost impossible to eat. And
Well, yeah,
the
but pickled, jellied fish, lutefisk, never lie, and that's never sounded good to me even when I heard about it the first time.
yeah,
But and you can imagine if you've ever had anything where you thought something was good, looked good, and then you bite into it and it's not what you expected.
yeah,
That is the worst. I had that happen one time. Some friends of mine from Hong Kong gave me a snack. We were trading snacks, and they gave me a sugared olive, which looked, and I bet it was good, but it looked like a candy.
yes,
And I bit into it, and it had the pit in it, right? So you bite into it, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. But my whole brain has told me this is going to be some tasty candy, and it wasn't. And anytime that kind of thing can happen, or when we were in Japan and that we had this awesome pastry, and it was like it was basically what amounted to French onion soup in a pastry. Like it was thick, it was just that level of
Oh
onion,
my,
right?
yeah.
Which tasty, but if you're expecting a breakfasty pastry and not a French onion pastry, not what you expect. So I can imagine. I I felt for the elf, and I think that might have been. I agree that definitely could be an inciting event for anyone. Like, hey, I was getting cookies. Well, I don't get my porridge. What's this? And then he's just like, lutefisk. So I felt I understood. I'm not, perhaps he got extreme. He starts killing people, but I kind of get it.
Yeah. So at that point, having been enraged by the lutefisk, which, by the way, it says here in the Wikipedia that it is often served with melted butter and gai toast or old cheese. That's in quotation marks. I don't know what that means, but I'm presuming
Aged cheese.
I guess so.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, the elf lays there enraged at how awful this is and that he didn't get his oatmeal. And he just starts yelling, and his scream reaches out across the valley to all of the elves of the wood. And so they come through their VC tunnels and come up in the barn and start to make war on Martin Starr's family. And this is when when you really understand the tone of this film as understood to be goofy. That everything here, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, there's a
Right.
playfulness to it that you realize this is intended to be a little elevated, a little silly.
Again,
And
it's very much like Gremlins, like when
yeah,
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
Gremlins are going
Yeah.
crazy.
Yes,
Yeah.
because they're like they're kind of like people, but they're kind of like creatures. They have kind of different designs from one another. They don't really understand guns. They have a tendency to do damage to themselves. They like to
I
drink
love how many
alcohol.
times this movie lectures us about guns.
Yeah, we don't have guns. We don't shoot each other in the face.
Right.
Why would you
Well,
have
we
like
don't even know how effective, like, even if they had a bunch of guns, we don't even know how effective that would be. Like, they
Right.
seem to be at least a little bit vulnerable to firearms, but like only in the same way that like Daffy Duck is
Yes.
vulnerable to firearms. Like they'll get shot, but it'll be comedic, and
Yes.
then they'll
Right.
get back. They'll get back
Unless they
up.
get shot in the face, like a couple of them got shot
they're
in the
the
face.
two
and
that
died.
die actually. I mean, they're dead when they come up when
Yeah.
they're discovered. They're like, whoa,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
happening?
I wished actually you could have had slightly more anti-elf mayhem. Like when the mom in Gremlins manages to stuff one of the gremlins into a blender, or another one into a microwave. You kind of wish that there could be more stuff like this. I don't know what like would be big enough to throw an elf into, but it seems like a combine harvester would sure come in handy.
Well,
Well,
I
they
mean,
do
there
it.
is. Yeah, go ahead, Drew. But
They do very amusingly impale one with an American flag.
Yes. Yes,
right,
that's right.
and
Yes.
they established early on the daughter is has plays softball, so when she gets out of bat, it's serious business.
Yeah, that was good.
Uh,
I really like that a lot. I want to take a moment to say, by the way, that she is really great. So that actor is named Zoe Winter Hansen, and she is great as the irritated
Teenager.
just a teenager who is mad that she's been dragged to Scandinavia, but she'd be mad no matter what because she's 16 years old and she's mostly drunk on hormones. So it's fine.
I agree that if somebody dragged me to where it was cold and snowy, I would
Yeah.
probably be angry
And
too. 'Cause that is
away from
not
your
my
friends and all that. Yeah.
away from friends, but definitely in the snow too. For me personally, that's where I would be like, oh, you suck.
Understood. Yeah. And it's so funny that we're so different in that regard because I love the snow. Love it. It's my favorite thing. We have a stupid little push plow that we keep in the garage to clear off the driveway when it snows.
Well, if you find your barn elf, you give porridge, get that done.
You're exactly right. Damn it.
Like snow's not going to clear itself, and he goes, "Hey, the snow cleared itself."
Yes, it's absolutely right.
Great.
Yeah,
that
is
but watch for lights.
It's a thing that people don't think of when you move here or anywhere where there's snow in the winter, is that leaving to go anywhere in the morning requires manual labor just before you can even move your car. It's it's so strange, but it's totally true. Okay, so anyway, this whole next section is this prolonged war full of bits. Not as many bits as Joe Dante had in Gremlins, but a lot of bits. And I love all that stuff.
There
Yeah.
is there does also become a party, and during that party is where we get character development, where stepmom and daughter get to bond. But that is the one thing is for not liking loud sounds, they do turn up the music, but that's just part of like because they discover a lot of alcohol. Evidently, part of being the Americans is, hey, we're gonna have a lot of alcohol. Oh no, it's from the party. Right, so they have all the alcohol from the party, and the barn elves are like, yeah, this is where it's at.
Well, in the universe of this movie, being Norwegian, whether elf or human, means that like no alcohol is safe around you, and then you can drink a lot of them, and you become a more bearable person. It's really, and they get wild and crazy and start doing damage, but. Yeah, there's great character bits between the stepmom and the daughter who it turns out truly does accept her, and I liked all that stuff. That was really cool. There's a beat. This is my personal opinion. There's a beat too many, because they go ahead and then do a plot thing where they have to rescue the mom and the daughter who get kidnapped, and I felt like
it does go on a bit long there.
You didn't need that whole section. You could have lifted out like 12 minutes of the film. It's all good, but I don't think the movie needs more plot at that point. But it's okay. But it does give us this extraordinarily exciting thing that I wish was an arcade game, where they are on where Martin Starr and his son are on a foot guided sled. That's basically just some rods of steel.
That sequence of everything in this movie felt like something out of an 80s movie. Like that felt like it could have been Back to the Future or Temple of Doom or I know this whole movie was kind of going for a general 80s genre vibe, but like in the business with like the buzz saws and everything.
Yes.
It just it felt like they had just nailed what they were going for.
Yeah, it's what the elves are throwing circular saw blades, which as silly as unlikely as that seems.
Somehow they seem to have hundreds of them.
And
I don't know how
really scary. I mean, you really, even though of course this is just a movie, but you're really worried that Martin Starr is going to get clipped by one of these saw blades, and it looks ridiculously dangerous to be going down a hill on this thing. I mean, like no way in hell would I try this myself. And so that was very exciting. I like that whole sequence. So I guess I guess that doesn't make sense that I said you can lose the whole rescue sequence, but keep the downhill thing. I mean, obviously they need the beat so they can do this. But I don't know, what do we need? We don't really need to walk through the whole rest of the plot, but I will say that Tor Aga, the character, comes back as being very, very important. What would you like me to hit on?
I mean, I think his whole reaction when they're saying, "Hey, there's really barn elves, you need to come," and it's like, "Look, I've settled in, man."
Yeah,
he's just great. Every tour's great all the way through.
Yes,
it's but as they bring him back up to help with the elves, and he realizes like, "Oh shit, this thing I have a museum about is really real."
Yes,
it's just fantastic.
Well, and it's a wonderful solution in the end. I mean, I guess we're a spoiler show. That in the end they make use of that museum as a place for an elf to live is
right
weirdly sweet, and they put a lampshade on it by having the teenager go, "Whoa, wait a minute, we've been having really violent last hour and a half and people died, so it's not as sweet as all that." But that's only because otherwise we'd be making that comment ourselves.
Because I mean, because without that we need there needs to be an explosion, and in traditional, again, kind of back to the movie theater in Gremlins. Not to say that they're lifting things in that way, but like the action beats.
Yeah, it's a template in a sense. Which is
pretty awesome. I also like seeing their village with the kind of stone, kind of almost egg-shaped huts,
Yes.
and like where we go, through these tunnels and see the elf village, which I
Yes.
think is fitting.
Forgive me. How the elf village, I'm so sorry that I didn't understand this when I'm watching it, but is it in the tunnels or just accessible?
No. I think they come out of the tunnels.
They
Like
come
they
out,
come
okay.
out of it, and they're when they're heading that way.
So it's just a hidden space, like
right. It's in the woods
Khazar lives
somewhere.
in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Or
Alright.
in an area far from people, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that makes sense. That's very grim.
And again, the Norwegian, like, yes, we talk it out. We don't, we have
You're
to. I
familiar
guess
with
we do have to get violent, but that's not what we should do.
He has a running gag where he talks about the Oslo Agreement, which is so funny. And that's
He's so
that
funny.
actually like became just like, oh no. I mean, with current events, I just
yes.
and again, it's so bizarre because like it's funny and kind of interesting when I saw it in September, and now I'm just like, oh god, like.
Well,
I don't know. Current event. It's just weird how current events change your viewing. Again, current events can change your viewing of a movie over time and how it all is presented. Again, it's not. It wasn't a huge deal, but it played in my mind. It's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Like, but
But it was definitely even then, even in the movie, it's like, and how'd that work out for you? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it was
of
very
course,
much
of course,
It
of
didn't
course.
last, but yeah, it was very, very funny. That guy's a treasure in this film. All right. Well, we should probably get to our final thoughts, because rather than work through every beat. But I think we hit on most of the main characters also. I want to say before we move into the final thoughts that I thought that the director, this is daring to give so much screen time to the main elf who doesn't look human, doesn't look like an elf. I guess he looks like you don't know what he looks, again, like Drew said, he looks like a moving garden gnome, and it's just a weird thing. It's weird to be confronted with a thing that is not a human but is humanoid in appearance.
Well, he gives props to the costuming and the effects, and practical effects, makeup people and everything, because they give you a variety of these elves, and they all have their own shtick, and they all have their own demeanor.
Yeah.
And his kind of like, hey, you know what? I got back to kind of trusting humans kind of turn. Like all of that, all the stuff they did with making them menacing where they need to be and kind of humorous and goofy when that time came, was cool, because I mean they're doing all the stuff that there's a corkscrew stick and like all this stuff that in how they balance that too, because in the hands of in a Chucky movie, that's a totally different thing, right? There's a lot more menace, but in throughout this we have this interplay between the humor and these things will kill you, because they poor Raymond, and the Raymond's death is pretty horrific, and is more in the Black Christmas kind of style.
It really is a Black Christmas death.
The sheriff, that is so crazy with the
getting run over
snowmobile.
The sheriff also is the closest thing to an asshole victim in this whole movie.
No, but she's
like,
not.
Yeah,
she's
but
so,
even
she's so great.
She's understandable, but she's pretty snide to them throughout the entire movie.
I mean,
they are
continuously
calling her during Christmas, so
like I said, she's understandable, but she is the closest thing to like a boo-hiss character.
Right? Yeah, it's I mean, but that's where you realize, that's where you check out emotionally and you go, this movie is not intended to be taken seriously.
You're not supposed to meditate on anyone's death too much.
I mean, she's not outside the realm for small town sheriff, much less small town sheriff dealing with outsiders. In a traditional movie, where it's just somebody coming from the big city, but you add American to it who come in and don't listen. I get it.
I thought she was great. I mean, in other
Yeah,
words,
no,
her
she does a
level
great job.
of sarcasm, I thought was hilarious. If this were a long running series,
Like I said,
she'd
I
have,
do understand where she's coming from,
yeah,
but like I mean, if anything, given the tone of the movie, to your earlier point, Jason, the character that this movie probably could have done with a few assholes, so you could really cheer
right,
when the elves killed them, because like nobody's that bad, like
right.
if she's the worst, like there's enough nuance in there that where yeah, she's kind of a jerk to them, but they're consistently dumbasses to
Yes,
her.
they are
So
Right.
right.
yeah,
That's an excellent way
so,
of putting it. Yeah.
yeah,
So
I do kind of like the idea that it's just a lot of just people, like
yes,
yeah. I mean,
everybody's
it is a little more
like
realistic.
yeah, there's not, her the way she acts is like, oh, I can kind of understand it, and then but there aren't the fact that there aren't just like aha these kids were mean to there's no like you could have done, oh, these kids bullied the youngest kid and and then the elves get back, and none of that happens. This is just like, hey, we're
right.
gonna go on this kind of horror comedy romp, and I thought that was cool.
No, I was so impressed. I mean, if you think about Black Christmas version 2, that is a nasty ass movie. I mean, it's really grim and dark. It doesn't really have any moments when you're just like having a good time. It's just
Right.
really really grim. This is not that at all. This is practically a party. I mean, this is a party movie.
Black Christmas 2, the one from the aughts, I actually feel like that one's pretty campy. The
Oh yeah.
original Black Christmas is pretty grim.
I suppose that's true. It is,
And
yeah.
but Jason, you were talking about the 2019 one, right? Or is that the year
No,
that
I was talking about the second one from the odds. Yeah, the 2019 one is the one where they make it a whole commentary on like feminism and stuff, and I
Right,
actually
right.
thought that was pretty good. I enjoyed that one.
I
But
gotcha. Okay.
yeah, but I hear Drew's point. I could probably go back and see it as campy, but I remember it as being just basically sort of relentless.
I mean, it's a grislier film than this, but it's also a movie
Mm.
where a yellow serial killer makes gingerbread cookies out of human flesh, and that is
He
kind of
does.
silly.
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
like
yeah, there's an absurdity level to it. Yes. That's totally
like
true.
when I think of grim, I would think of like the original Black Christmas is a disturbing.
Yes.
It's a great movie, but it's a
And
disturbing
it's
movie.
plotted it doesn't have a recognizable Hollywood plot. I mean, it just sort of,
No, not at
uh
all.
but anyway, okay. Let's get to those. Hey, by the way, bonus, you just got a description of the entire Black Christmas franchise.
Which we've covered on
Right.
the show. Hacha,
Yes.
Yeah,
hacha,
yeah.
hacha.
Yeah, so you could listen to our episodes on that. All right. Let's get our final thoughts on There's Something in the Barn. Tony, you're first. Have you enjoyed discussing this movie?
Absolutely. I mean, I again, I was counting down to this is one of the movies that I wanted to cover. I wish there were a few I wish we could cover, but this is one I wanted to bring back from Fantastic Fest. Ask when it was coming out. They gave me a good idea on when we could watch it again, and I said that's perfect. I can't wait to to get everybody to watch this because I figured it would be a hit amongst the crew, and I'm so glad I was right. Again, good people making cool stuff is always, it's nice. And again, my kind of wishing I could go back to Norway played into it as well. So I'm glad everybody dug it, and I think if you want, I think it wears its kind of gremlinsy flavor on its sleeve. But there's more to it than that, and the cast is excellent. I think it's a fun one to add. The violence is cartoony enough. It's not as mean spirited as some of the other Christmas horror out there, for better or worse, right? Like I don't mean that necessarily as a knock, but I think it has perhaps a more universal appeal, and I think that's great.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing this to us, Julia. What are your thoughts? There's Something in the Barn.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all the aspects are well done. The performances are good, great cast, well developed characters, neat visual effects, beautiful scenery. So, and then yeah, and it's a fun story. So I think it's a really good holiday movie for people who like a little bit of horror in their holidays.
Yeah, thank you. Drew, what about you?
I think Tony nailed it earlier. It's a horror comedy romp. That's a perfect
Hmm.
description of it. I also want to say that I loved that it ended with "It's Christmas, Baby, Please Come Home" by
Yeah,
Darlene Love, which is the song that opens Gremlins, and I feel like that's sort of a pitch perfect.
yeah,
As far as like homages to Gremlins, I thought that was very right on and well earned. I think this movie's a lot of fun, and this has been a year with an unusually strong selection of Christmas themed horror movies. So the fact that we chose to do this one out of all the options speaks to I think how enjoyable it is, because it is really fun, and it's definitely one that I think I will probably add into my rotation of movies I watch during this time of year.
excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, I will not clutter all of those wonderful thoughts with my just cribbing off of your notes. This has been a really great discussion, and I've enjoyed talking about it. And I'm a hard one to please. So honestly, let's get to endorsements. And also, I think it would be good to talk about. This is our last show, so if you have any thoughts for the listener, I didn't give you homework. I didn't ask you to come up with your favorite thoughts for the year or favorite memories of the year. So that's hard to think of on the spot. But nice thoughts would be good. So, Tony, do you have anything to endorse?
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching a lot of stuff. We watched Reese Darby in Japan, which I thought was great. If you're a fan of his, I've liked him since I think I saw him in Flight of the Conchords.
Mm,
But that's great. But I would be remiss without we're trying to fit everything in. But another one I came from Fantastic Fest. The Sacrifice Game, which is definitely not a romp in this same way.
yeah,
um it's it's definitely more along the horror. It's definitely among the Black Christmas kind of aspect of things. But directed by Jen Wexler, who's awesome. I also know Heather Buckley, who's a producer on it, and she's awesome, punk rock, amazing person. There's a lot of people. If you enjoyed The Ranger, some of the teams here. But I enjoyed it. Again, it's a it's a rougher movie, but it's if you want more edge to your Christmas horror, and I think the payoff is really good in that movie. Again, I like supporting Jim Wexler and her crew are good people that are really trying to make waves.
The
And
the the
women
twist.
directing and everything, and producing all of that. Not just that it's a movie I like, but also like their ethos I really like as well. Cool music, they have good taste in music, and I think again like that's on Shudder. So if you have a Shudder subscription, I definitely recommend that because I think it's solid, and again I know some of the people there, but like regardless of that, like that's I like to uplift when people are doing awesome stuff that I dig. So I was also that was another one where we were talking and go, okay, I want at least if nothing else, I want to have she would be a great person if we ever needed to have somebody on like
hmm
just awesome. So that and I've also been watching a lot of Shaw Brothers kung fu flicks. So that's been one of the things I've been doing as well. There's a lot. And artistically, I saw Boy and the Heron, the new
Oh
Studio
yeah,
Ghibli
yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah.
And while maybe not my favorite narrative, it has a lot of really just amazing and heartbreaking moments, as well as just looking beautiful. If nothing else, see it on the biggest screen you possibly can, because it is a feast for the eyes. I don't know if it's the most rewatchable movie but I would definitely buy a 4K version of it and put it up on a screen just because it's amazing to look at as well. It's solid, but I think Nausicaa is one of my favorites, or maybe perhaps Kiki or Porco Rosso. Those are my all-time favorites. But see it while you can. I've heard the dub is great. I saw it subtitled, but we're in a world where amazing dubs are being made. Good people making them. Good writers are writing the dubs. So luckily I got the choice here in Austin, so I went and saw it subtitled. But yeah, again, back to the Christmas thing. Sacrifice Game is my big Christmas movie we haven't covered, right?
I don't know any of those people, Tony, and I also really liked it. And as to your comments about the roughness of it, while that is true, I think the twist at the end of the movie kind of
I'm
like,
with
even
you.
if even if that is that part is difficult for you to get through, I think when the worm turns, boy does it turn, and it turns onto some of the worst people possible.
I wish that you could meet both Jen and Heather, because I think you would get along famously. Their punk rock aesthetic and ethos and mindset, I think they're people. They're definitely people you should know should you encounter them. And
Well, maybe one day,
Sure.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very, very much. Julia, what do you have for us?
So last week I, endorsed the Doctor Who 60th anniversary specials, and I just want to re-endorse because I loved the third one. It was really, really fun for me. I also enjoyed the Leave the World Behind movie on Netflix. That's Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke and I'm forgetting the other star's name, but anyway, it's a really, really good movie. Yeah, thank you. The ending was, to me, kind of unsatisfying, but I got it. I understood why it ended the way it did, but it's very suspenseful. The whole movie, like, you're just kind of going, what the hell is going on? This is super creepy. So it's just really, really cool. Basically, story about when, if you're cut off communication wise from the rest of the world and all kinds of shit's going down, like, what do you do? And like, how do people react to each other and everything? It's really, really interesting.
That is the best stuff. That is the best parts of it. And people, it's so funny. People likened it to Lost in a way. I do too. In as much as
You just don't know what's going on.
A lot of amazing stuff, you don't know what's happening, and it's riveting until you get to a sort of unsatisfying ending. But it doesn't matter, because most of the film is pretty great. And by the way, maybe if the guy were sitting right here on the show with us, he would probably explain the ending to us, and I would realize, it's my fault. I didn't get it. So.
Well, I mean, I have seen Julia Roberts talk about the ending, so I do get it. But it just wasn't. I would have preferred a different telling.
I would have preferred any telling at all. I mean, I would have. In other words,
well, don't spoil it by
yes.
talking too much.
I feel like I missed it, and I was staring at it the whole time. So okay, but whatever. Drew, and I apologize. You know what, Julia, that was shitty. I shouldn't have argued with your endorsement. That's because I loved every minute of it. So I'm sorry. Drew, what about you?
I also really have been enjoying the new Doctor Who. My personal favorite of the three that they've aired so far is the second one, which is sort of the Doctor Who version of The Thing, in my opinion. But I'm also, tentatively excited about the incoming Christmas special. I saw a clip of it today because someone tagged me in it. On Twitter. And speaking of mixing whimsy with horror, which is something Doctor Who often does very well, the clip was a bunch of goblins singing a jazz song about eating a baby, and that's hats off to Doctor Who and the BBC traumatizing small children since 1963.
Seriously.
Love.
But aside from that, more towards what what we've been discussing tonight, which is Christmas horror. The same day that I watched both this movie and The Sacrifice Game, I also watched It's a Wonderful Knife on Shudder, which it feels kind of along this sort of new horror tradition that seems to have cropped up in recent years. Whereas we're going to remake an old film, but we're going to add a slasher. So, like, you had Happy Death Day, which was Groundhog's Day with a slasher. Then you had Totally Killer, which we did back in October, which is Back to the Future with a slasher. This movie is this movie is exactly what it sounds like. It's a Wonderful Life, but with a slasher. And the slasher himself is called the Angel, and he's one of the cooler looking horror movie villains that I've seen in a while. Like, he looks like a gigantic version of a tree topping angel that you'd put on your Christmas tree. Aside from that, it is a surprisingly wholesome queer love story as well. So, like, if you want some Christmas schmaltz to go along with your slasher movie mayhem, this movie has that in spades. I really like, honestly, out of all three of the Christmas horror movies, and I enjoyed them all. Like, it was a triple feature that I did on a day where I wasn't feeling well, and it was a lovely experience because I actually enjoyed every single movie, and it definitely got me in the Christmas spirit in my own weird way. But I think this one might have been my favorite of the three Christmas horror movies that I watched today, and that's that day, and that's saying a lot because I did actually really like watching all of them. Like, I thought they were all really good movies. So, this has been a year again with unusually strong, because there's always tons of Christmas horror movies that are released, but not always are they any good. To say that there were three that came out in the same year that were actually all pretty strong is saying a lot. So, Sacrifice Game, yes. There's Something in the Barn, yes. And It's a Wonderful Knife, yes. And I also suggest to you that you do a triple feature yourself sometime this month, because I think you'll find that it gets you in the Christmas spirit in its own weird way.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you said you wanted us to say something nice or whatever about the
Yes.
Oh, yeah, none of us did that.
I know. So for me, I always enjoy closing up a year that I've gotten to hang out with you wonderful fellows, and our monster movie happy hour friends when we've gotten to see them as well. It's just such a nice way to just kind of enjoy a movie and then enjoy a conversation and relax and
No, absolutely.
escape for a little while.
Now, I
So
do have endorsements, but I want to agree with what you just said, which is
yeah.
that this has been it's work for all of us to figure out what we're going to watch and then watch it and do the show and edit and all that. But it's a wonderful thing that's become a part of our lives, and I really, it means a lot to me. So, and I love hearing from people on the Facebook page with like comments or corrections makes it sound, or they'll go, "Oh, you asked about this. Here's the answer." I love that so much. Or, "Oh, I hadn't heard about this." I love that interaction. It's so fun. And also with this show, I think I watch movies more deliberately. I pay more attention. I think I experience them better than if I weren't watching them for the show. And that's been a really neat thing.
I want to add, I guess, because I forgot to do it.
Yeah.
I want to say that this year has, it's had extraordinary highs, but it's also had some real challenging lows. And this podcast and being able to talk to y'all and sort of this collective journey through genre movies, it's been a constant source of structure and a constant source of, happiness, even during times where, I have been profoundly unhappy with things. So, being able to do this is, it's just joyous, and I think that is a perfectly Christmassy note to
Yeah.
end things on.
Great.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's been up and down. I'm still looking to, have an album that hasn't come out, because I'm still looking for a guitarist, and I think it's really good, and hopefully it'll be out next year. But challenges like that, and like a bunch of other stuff that's come up, it's definitely huge ups and downs. And then having people go, oh, I like that movie, or hanging out with other cast members, or we did Monster Movie Happy Hour crossover, all these things that that just bring back this love of this joy of watching film, and then sharing that with others, I think is really, really great. I often retreat to, hey, I'm gonna watch a movie as my big, this is how I get through stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes more so the music, it trades back and forth. And sharing that with other people, and good friends. Going again, for me, going to Fantastic Fest, and then being able to see a bunch of films and bring them forward, and talk to cool people who are also creating stuff. That also has been great. And, covering those films here is always like this special, there's an extra special moment to that. Kind of those ripples come out of things, and I think that that's great. And that's always, and I hope that in that spirit, that other people are finding cool films, or films they may not have thought about for a while, and also how that affects you going forward through. I hope the rest of the year is excellent. Because the holidays can be tough for many reasons. And we talked about earlier. What makes Christmas horror? Well, there is that element of like, sometimes we just need to get away from maybe the saccharine sweet, Coca-Cola Santa version of things, especially in the in the horror genre. And so when things are tough, like these kind of alternative movies also, I think, play into that in our psyche. And so I hope that even if the whatever people are going through isn't maybe the happy holiday version of this, that we all find that kind of commonality in what we love, and lift that up where we can. That's kind of, those are my thoughts anyway. I don't know, maybe I went on too long. I don't know.
No. I thought that was wonderful, and it's totally true. We definitely, we on the show, but I think we as just people, we definitely need one another, and gathering around stories is one of the best ways to do it. So strangely out of order after those deep thoughts, I definitely did want to get in a couple of endorsements. I recommend The Signalman from the BBC with Denham Elliott. It is a
Cool.
1976 Christmas horror story, and it's really wonderful. And also, I watched the new Emmanuel's Revenge, which is an Italian revenge thriller that is not a pastiche of the French Emmanuel erotic films, but rather the Italian Emmanuel thriller movies. And it's really cool. It's and it leads to a very neat, kind of terrifying ending. So that was
I was
that
curious
was a
about
nice
that.
surprise.
So
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
it is what it is. I mean, it's still it's still basically an erotic thriller, but it's an erotic revenge thriller, and they make really excellent use of all of the apartments and galleries and nice cars, and just general classiness of hanging out in Milan with some rich people trying to kill one another. So it's it's really great looking. So I recommend that. Anyway, and I've really benefited greatly from being with all of you. It keeps me from looking too far inward, and it's useful to like reach out and have people to hang out with. And if you are listening to the show, come to the Facebook page, tell us your thoughts. We absolutely want to we want there to be community with people talking to one another, and we'll do our best to answer ourselves. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Happy holidays,
Definitely
everybody.
thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, bye.
Happy holidays. Bye.
No, ho, ho, ho.